Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sentinels Conversation with the Crew. Today we are thrilled to be talking with Danielle Bisutti. Now, she is an amazing actress, and you know her. You've seen her. When I first started working with her, I was like, God, she looks familiar. And you recognize her from many, many, many things. She's a very talented actress working in LA, and she's in demand. She's doing a lot of stuff. God of War fans know her. And so the character is the God of War's wife named Rhea, thank you.
Rhea. See, she's right back there.
Yeah, there she is. And you guys were nominated for all sorts of awards for the last one. And there may or may not be another one coming. Who knows? We're not allowed to, could it not be happening? She's been all over television. And the show you're on right now is?
White and Shining Armor. Yes. And it can be streamed for free on byutv.org. Just like you'd go to Netflix, you just go to byutv.org and you can watch all three seasons. 4 hasn't come out yet. And actually, in about 3 weeks' time, I should be heading back to Atlanta to wrap up season 5.
So you might be shooting again soon.
Gonna get the nasal swab up in there. Gonna get my temperature taken every day. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
When the interview's over, I'll tell you the story about Peter Woodward's film he tried to get going and how it was shut down immediately.
That is exactly, yeah, that seems to be what's happening. Oh, God bless him.
Oh, he's fine. He dodged the bullet, I'll tell you about it. Yeah. But this is about you. So everybody, I just want to briefly talk to Danielle about the character she plays in Sentinels, and then she can talk about anything else. One of the interesting accidental crossroads that happened on the show is that she's playing Six, and Six is a deeply spiritual character. As a matter of fact, Six's arc moving from what you already know about her forward is transformative, not just for her, but for humanity. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that she is a caster, which is a different take on standard telepaths as you see in television and movies. And she's part of a coven from Ganymede. And as we're going to find out, she's in constant contact with every one of her sisters. She's never alone. Her internal spiritual life is constantly as important to her as what's going on around her. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. And
voices in my head already, Mike.
That's how
I connected to this character.
But the thing about it is, Danielle and I, Danielle, you can say what attracted you to the project and how Chris called you and how you came on. And then I'd like to talk a little bit then about how amazing it is that someone like you ended up playing, Six. It really is I can't imagine anyone else doing it now that you've done it, because you are such a perfect fit for her spiritually. But why don't you talk a little bit about why you decided to do Sentinels, which, was deeply beneath you. And I'm so grateful you did.
I'm going to be charging you for this interview, by the way.
Yeah, well, you should make something.
Chris Judge, I adore and trust and love so much. And he'd been talking about Sentinels for a while. In fact, I think even there was a name you had prior to Sentinels.
Well, we're calling the podcast Sentinels to try to keep the copyrights clear. So there's, he wants to call it Starhawks. I was calling it Kingdom Come,
Right, Star and the Kingdom, yeah, both great alternatives. Yeah, and so he'd been mentioning the project for a while, and we sure get along just fine over there in God of War, and had a great experience together.
Oh, that's an understatement. He raves about you. He raves about you.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, no, we had a really good time in that game and really connected. And, and it's, you kind of build a bond and trust with somebody. And so he had mentioned this and he was raving about you and how brilliant you are. And he knows I'm such a sci-fi nerd and fantasy geek. And, as I was telling you, Battlestar Galactica is one of my favorite shows ever and universes in the world. And so I play Freya, and when you first meet her, she's the witch of the woods, and she's got that very sort of pagan, earthy, using the elements and with the runes and the different flower petals in the front yard and the magic that she does. But there's also just this, I think, real a diaphanous quality to her. She's very led by intuition. And there is that spiritual sense to Freya. There's also a mothering Freya, a very feminine quality, but a strength to her. And he'd seen me go to some very vulnerable places as Freya and lay bare my soul. So when he read the script, even though I am just a few years older than being a teenager.
Lies. Lies. Take one look at her and tell me that's not a lie, everybody.
he said, I think there's this role that you'd be perfect for. And I was like, great, anything, I trust you. What is it? And so when I read it and I realized, you know, she's a teenager, I was like, Chris, I know the Botox is working well, but buddy, I am like, well beyond those years. And he's like, no, it's a anime and it's all boys. Oh, okay. And what really did resonate with me was that whole caster quality of picking up the frequency and the communication without speaking, which is something that I've always been, I think most women and human beings in general, we all have that sixth sense. We all have that gut instinct. It's intuition. You know,
A lot of us either don't, don't use that, or have been actively trained to resist being like that. I mean, I think it takes a real effort to stay intuitive, don't you?
100%. It's not at all taught in schools. We're not at all encouraged to listen to that gut instinct. In fact, we're more science based in the sense of like, you know, if I can put it in a beaker and it makes sense, and you can put the thing in the thing, and 1 + 1 is 2, like that makes sense to me, because it has nothing to do with science, even though it is part of who we are as humans. And but then there's that spirit element, right? So it's just that, like, that feeling element. And I love that immediately about Six, her way of communicating, her bond with the coven, her bond with the sisters, of course the way in which the casters are used at first, sort of take advantage of that. You can take advantage of that skill set, and I know that that's something that you're exploring in the piece. But I just so happened to, at that moment in my life, be entering a phase in this self-quarantine where I was doing some more deep spiritual work on myself. And a big part of the work that I've been doing for these past 14 weeks in this course that I'm doing has to do with really being in the moment, really connecting to that intuition and letting that be your guide. So when you came in with this role and we started talking about her, I was geeking out to like all at like the nth degree, because I'm like, of course this is coming in right now. I channeled it right in so that I could really tap into this quality of beingness that I was embodying.
It's remarkably the right character and the right actor at the right time. I mean, it was ridiculous how well you did on that. So I want to ask you a little bit more about spirituality, and specifically the history of spirituality, because I think that's not only relevant to Six in science fiction, but it's also relevant to real life. And so we'll get to that in a second. But before I do all that, so you said you're working on this 14-week thing, and you're working on your spirituality, and so what is it? I mean, what are you actually working on? What is that?
So it started off as a 12-week program. It was just one of those things that came up in my Facebook feed, and I never click, but it just was presenting these questions and these like curiosities. And I was like, that's interesting. Yeah. I found myself going down that road, or, oh yeah, I found myself having that same pattern that sort of blocks a certain energy from entering my life. And so the more I kept clicking, I got on the phone call, and it's taught by this couple. It's actually a 12-week course, but it's now progressed into like a 15-week situation. And it's sort of, I believe, is meant to be like a mastermind just like for the rest of my life with this group. I mean, it sounds a little bit like the Jedis, you know, it's just like once you're part of this mastermind and this sort of way of being in your life, it continues onward. And so it's not like go through the course and get out of here. It's like, basically, I'm a Jedi now.
Yeah, that is a wonderful statement. I could dig in it more and say, like, how do you feel more like a Jedi now than you did before? I mean, you know, Jedis are magical, effective people who can get things done that others can't. Is that how you feel now? Is that different?
I mean, just like watch Obi-Wan, right? Like he's just like, those aren't the droids you're looking for. Like there's just like, there's no pause, and there's like, he's just like anchored in, you know, and there's like these like amazing moments with, I mean, just like the wisdom that Yoga spouts out, you know, even though his cadence is sort of backwards, which is so enjoyable. What is it like, that try or try not,
Try or no, do not try. Do not try.
Do not. There is no try.
There is no try. That's it.
Do or do not. So, right, like words like try or words like hope, even though Obi-Wan, you're my only hope. Like hope can kind of be this little dangling carrot that we're constantly like hoping for. So we're actually not like activating our life right now in the present moment to manifest or to actually be in the beingness of it. So I have this thing. Do you really want to see how deep this goes?
I'm very interested in what you're doing.
Okay. So, okay, wait, hold on. Do you see what it says there?
It says be, do, and homie. The green one's hard to read. Be, do, have. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Be, do,
So
homie is a philosophy that we should
I
consider.
love that. You just brought me back to like Homie the Clown, if anyone even knows. But Homie the Clown. Okay. So that's like in that beingness, right? Like when, you know, you're training to be a Jedi, it's like, you know, using the Force, right? You cannot see the Force. You can't quantify it. You just trust that it's there and it's the guiding force governing you moving forward. You've done the practice. He was in the woods. He was doing his thing with the lightsaber. You know what I mean? So you're going through all these things and you're doing the work. And so if when we are in the beingness of what that thing is that we think we want, or that we desire to have it, you got to be in the beingness first. Because a lot of times people think when I have it, I'll do the thing and then I'll be the thing. But it's actually the opposite. You got to go Yoda on it. You got to be it even when it's not there. You got to be in the beingness of it. Do the actions of that beingness. And then you know what? The Force is going to bring it in. And I know I'm going straight Star Wars, like geek town.
I love the fact you said you got to go Yoda on it. That's really the best thing I've ever heard.
But it's true. I mean, I think ultimately, look at Star Wars is like, to me, like it's like the epitome. But I think why it resonates so deeply is like, even if you're not a religious person, right? Because I am a religious person and a spiritual person. I happen to be both, because you can be religious and not spiritual, and you can be spiritual and not religious. I happen to be both. I think that everybody, even potentially, and I'd love to talk to more atheists about it, whether you believe, okay, now we're going to bring it to outer space, whether you believe in the Big Bang, right, which is all science, or creation, you're having faith that the gases and everything started from something, right? So Big Bang, gases formed and came together, and electricity, and then life. So there's got to be some faith involved in how those gases got there. Where did they come from? And I'm not even saying you have to attribute it to a creator if you don't want to, but there's faith involved, because we cannot prove it, can we?
Interesting you bring this up, and this will be the part where I'll probably edit what I'm about to say out.
No, don't edit it, because you're more science. You have a science mind, and I'm curious.
And I'm an atheist.
We're the perfect match.
Definitely. So there is a scientific, and there is a scientific explanation for why the universe existed. It came out of nothing, and what it was is the fact that it wasn't gases coming together. It was the fact that the valence charge of the non-space changed, and therefore created space, and everything exploded out of it. But to your point, that even Stephen Hawking talks about the fact this only works if we believe in a cosmos where every single set of physical laws can exist and does exist in this giant multiverse. And at that point, you're like, well, wait a minute. If the whole reason this happens is because it inevitably had to, because we live in an infinite universe where this had to happen at least once, possibly an infinite number of times. And we just happened, and of course we live in a universe where it happened, because otherwise we wouldn't live. Still starts to sound an awful lot like, Hindu religion to me. The philosophies, when you get very abstract with them, don't ever seem that different. I mean, a lot of the theologians who taught me when I was growing up, in a lot of ways, they talked a lot like scientists.
100%. Oh yeah. And in the church that I go to, they have a class that is creation and science. Like you can't have one without the other. And so there's all sorts of ways. I mean, I know that there's probably even Christian faith on the scale where it's like, just the word evolution is evolution. I remember hearing that growing up. I remember hearing evolution, and I was like, oh, I can't hear that word. But I mean, we're evolving people. Like we can't put our head in the sand.
No, I utterly agree. My training is with the Jesuits, and
the Jesuits.
I was educated by the by the Jesuits all the way up until college.
Yeah.
And come from a very religious family. I have lots of priests and nuns in my family. And the Jesuits are, they're not screwing around intellectually. There is such a thing as serious religious people who are also not intellectually afraid to dig into things.
Yeah.
Barnabas, some of the great philosophers of the Middle Ages. So it isn't all like, crazy Southern super churches where it's evolution. There is such a thing as spirituality and faith, in the context of a world with physical laws.
With physical laws that are, think about how perfect they are. I mean, I was just squeezing a lemon in my salad and the seeds were popping out. And I was like, how perfect is it that most all things have the seed of itself, of life to sustain, masculine and feminine creating life, gravity, right? Up and down. You have moon and you have sun, very masculine and feminine governing this planet and giving us gravity. It's all about balance.
Yeah.
So whenever I talk about, and I'm a registered independent, I'm a Libra, I'm a very down the middle of the road person, which either you love or you hate. Most people are okay with that because I'm not completely like closing my ears off to what their side is. But I think polarization is actually the problem. When we're too skewed, we're off the scales, we're tipping over. And that's why it could be phenomenal to have a female in office. Why? Not because women need no, it was so wonderful to have that feminine energy because it's been such a patriarchal rule for so long to come in and balance it. I mean, I even think, with a female president, male vice, or vice versa, to give both sides of that perspective. I mean, feminine strength, it shouldn't look masculine.
Interesting. How does it look different, the masculine strength to you?
Well, I think we inherently have both masculine and feminine within all of us. It's like what one chromosome, was it an X and X and an X and a Y, right? So we are the other half of the other. And when our bodies come together, we create more life. So there are masculine components and feminine components, I think, in all human beings. I know that, when the movement of the feminist movement started, there was a lot to pull out of, so there had to be extreme measures, right? So they were pulling, I mean, like with the 20s, we just were able to vote, right? So there were, at one point we were property. I mean, whenever you watch in a great period, a piece of a woman is treated like a piece of property. So there was a lot, but now here we are, and it's like, and I remember sort of reading this article about the feminist movement in the 80s, where a lot of women cut their hair and they wore the shoulder pads and they were kind of suiting up to be women or men in a man's world. But it's like, but we're not men. We have feminine strengths, and those strengths look and feel different, and they are important to bring to that balance, that nurturing quality, that mother quality, that multitasking quality, that healing quality, that inclusive quality.
That's beautifully put. Another one of our cast members said this to me recently while we were talking, and I thought it was brilliant. She said, look, we have to bring, it's not enough to just stick avatars that look like ourselves on the top of an inhumane system. We have to bring our own qualities to it and change the system. Otherwise, we'd be perfectly happy with what's going on now, and we wouldn't want to change it. And, that's brilliant. That, it would be wonderful to have, a woman president, assuming she wasn't part of the system, right? You got to hope for this, and that's politics. We don't want to talk about that.
But, and I can talk about politics and not get triggered at all.
Well, no, I just meant the audience might.
Oh, yeah. No, we wanted to keep this a happy place for everybody. But yeah, I just think it's about bringing us back to balance. And you know what? This is a whole, like, I call it like a great reformation, right? Because we have made progress. I think it's important to acknowledge progress. We have made progress. It's like in any relationship, you change 5 things, but there's still 5 to change, or 2 to change, let's just say. And I'm just harping on you about those 2, but I'm not even actually acknowledging the 5. And it's like, well, hey, this is awesome where we've gotten. And like, here's where we got to go. Let's focus in this area. I think that communication is a huge part of it.
You've clearly got some skills, and you've been practicing this. You can tell.
I'm a Libra.
There you go. You got some skills. Yeah.
Freya for president. Just teasing.
There we go.
I do not want that job.
Well, okay. I want to continue talking about in slightly different contexts. So let's talk about this in terms of the longer view of humanity. So you're talking about a belief in the unseen, but not necessarily the supernatural. What you're talking about is belief in the parts of ourselves that we can't necessarily point to.
Mhm.
Am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, it's like that sixth sense that's not sight, smell, touch, taste, or sound. It's that gut feeling. It's that little voice that goes, bring a pencil with you, Mike, before you leave. And you're like, pencil? I don't need a pencil. And then you like, you go out the door, and sure enough, 2 hours later, someone's like, do you have a pencil? Or like you have to
Yeah,
fill
that
something
was
out and
good.
it only requires pencil.
Yeah.
And that it's just a little tiny voice. You don't know where it's coming from, but it's channeling in. Like that's what I anchored in when you told me about six. I was like, ooh, this is all like that,
Yeah.
being an open receptacle for the transmission.
It did. Yes, very much for her. But where she came from in my thought process
Yeah.
is that I've been thinking a lot about big things as I get older. And one of the things is that you mentioned this. Science is a relatively new way of thinking. And it has delivered a lot to us very quickly. I mean, it's a lot. It's given, vaccines and, forges and homes and air conditioning and a great deal of comfort. Even the poor of us lives in comfort unimaginable 5,000 years ago. And we've been on the planet for 500,000, half a million years, humans just like us, with loves and fears and genius and passions and children to love and heartache and trials and fear. I mean, we've been us for 500,000 years. We've only had anything like written language for 4,000, and we've only had anything like what we would call the scientific method for, let's say 400 to be charitable.
Mm.
Yet look where we are. I mean, so many of us feel something lacking. So many of us are unhappy. We live, like I said, the poorest of us. I mean, obviously not. I don't mean that literally. Please don't write an email. I understand the metaphor. But the poor of us live in comfort and opulence that, the people who grew up in the streets of Babylon, the geniuses who wandered the plains of Africa and were trying to invent ways of surviving animal attack, couldn't even imagine the idea of concrete walls. What they would have given for that.
Yeah.
Yet, and we know from the analyzing cave paintings and the stone Madonnas that were carved in the artwork we found. This is where I came to it from studying artwork. The artwork we found of these earliest cultures, these earliest family units, whatever you want to call them, they were somewhere between what we would call a culture and a family, somewhere in between that.
Tribe, yeah.
They existed very much in a different world. They thought of their dreams and the states they could go to as real and as powerful and sometimes as more comforting than the life they were living.
Mm-hmm.
They lived very spiritual lives, depending on how you want to define that. And now we don't.
Yeah.
Not at least, to anything like what they would recognize. Yet, it's hard to imagine that we live like that for 498,000 years and seem to be okay with it. And then suddenly we've changed everything. And are we missing something in our obsession with the provable, in our deep need to have tactile evidence for everything? As good a philosophy that is, have we lost something?
I think we have. I think that's only part of it, it's, again, I go back to that voice. It's like, you can't explain that. You can't explain how things are kind of perfectly designed to continue life. This is why religion, or a way of worshiping, or a way of connecting, if any of those words are triggering, like connecting to a source that had an idea or had a plan or a purpose for this thing that we call life. It is a question that we've been asking since the beginning of time. And there are, in every tribe and every culture, a different way of paying reverence to that. It's a connecting to a higher source that I think, like, if you think about it, like almost breathing life into what we are, and then connecting to, just like how the community between each other is so important. And we've seen that more than ever with this COVID moment. it's like you can't stand people on the 405, man. You just want to run them off the road, right? But then the second that like we're completely like not able to be with one another, people can't wait to go out to a restaurant or, you know, be able to like give somebody a hug, you know, and not look at somebody with your little mask and like you're just looking around and you're like, oh my God, is that person going to be the death of me? I mean, it's been a very interesting little trial period, this little experiment that we've been experiencing.
Well, it's interesting too, because as a group, we haven't had any non-materialistic call to action or to call to behave, to have some sort of emotional responsibility for the other person. You know, it's all the discussions are, we've got to get the economy going. It's like, well, wait a minute, why the fuck does the economy exist except to protect the people who live in it? I mean, isn't the whole point of civilization just to protect families and children? You know, why is sacrificing 150,000 people, you know, for the sake of money an acceptable conversation?
It's not, and it never has been.
Yeah.
But it's also been happening since the beginning of time, because you also have a component of humanity called greed.
We do, and it's interesting. Well, obviously, greed has been with us since the beginning, but there seemed, before recent times, spirituality seemed to be a way for human beings to find peace and happiness in a world they couldn't understand.
Yep. Yep.
Now it appears that profit, and I mean, we are literally having conversations about how many people it's worth killing to keep, you know, rich people rich. You know, should we pass a bill that says that if your maniac rich boss who is not putting himself at risk can force you back to work, then your family can't sue him for enough money to live? That's actually what that bill just broke down over.
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't seem to me that this is it doesn't seem like that this is going to work. And Sentinels is actually about, spoiler, the end of humanity. It's about the fact that we can't live like this. It won't work. If we're going to, Sagan said, if we're going to go to the stars, it won't be us. It might be people who look a lot like us. It might be our descendants. It might be the people who replace us, but it won't be us, because we can't do it.
We're not getting along well enough, are we?
Yeah, we can't be smart and cooperative enough to live in a limited environment where you know, somebody grabbing all the resources is a death sentence to everybody.
And that's the thing. It's like, when would it ever be enough? And can we really live in this sort of utopian, idyllic world where we actually get along in the sandbox? You know, I think about just this basic thing we teach our kids, like, oh no, share the toy, like the value of sharing. You know, but are they watching our leaders set examples for that? You know,
Yeah, and you know, if society is training us from children to value possessions, and the person with the most possessions is the smartest.
Oh, it's the worst. This social media and you know, the advent of reality television, where we're following a certain family that has means and acting just like complete derelicts, like people who have no regard, and you know, bad behavior getting rewarded, getting your own show.
Isn't it amazing? I think when it started, it was like we were supposed to be laughing at them, and then suddenly they became our gods. Suddenly everybody was like, but look what they got.
And miserable, okay? Because it's not about the thing. We all know that. You get a toy and it's shiny, and then 6 months later it's not shiny. It's not the thing, you know?
Yes, but of course, poverty is a nightmare. You know, there has to be, you know, the reason we all obsess about, I'm guessing, the reason we obsess about material things is we live in a culture where, you know, if you don't have material things, you're living in the street. And, you know, you've probably heard that part of my story. I used to be homeless. And it's extraordinarily difficult, you know, to not be afraid of that if there's no if there's no sense that the other people we're in this together, and if something bad happens, you know, people will take care of me. But it seems like we used to be like that. And you were talking about something called feminine strength, and I'm wondering if that's what we've lost, if by going completely to the other side, to becoming completely patriarchal. But
yeah, the mother energy. Mama's not let her baby on the street.
I mean, by the way, dad shouldn't either, you bastards. I don't know how you can do that.
I said, you bastard. I was right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine someone and letting anything bad happen to my child, but apparently there are a shitload of men who can. And there are far less women who can. So do you think it's, when you're talking about female energy, female strength, is that kind of what we're talking about? The ability to build a society where we actually do care a little bit about each other a little bit?
I think it certainly could help. I mean, it's worth giving it a shot, because we've been so skewed one way for so long.
Anything's worth. I'll put a robot in charge at this point. Let's do something.
Well, we're already there. Her name is Alexa, and she knows everything that's going on. And Siri.
She's not in my house.
Siri.
Oh yeah, she is in my house.
My Siri she gets testy with me sometimes.
Oh,
I have her on the British voice setting, so she's just
there's no way not to feel good.
5 miles, make a right.
It's like, make better decisions and stop whining about it.
Yes. Keep calm and carry on, darling.
Yes. By the way, we still have a monarchy. Isn't that working out well? But I was curious about that because a lot of the show is really, it's about the transitional phase when the Terrans have to basically be put in the back seat, and the Genins, our children, our successors, who have figured out a better way, move on. And a big part of that is going to be Six's. She's going to become the emotional. I keep coming back to what you said about feminine strength. I think that's who she is in the show. She's the one who, while Abrams and Jack are, at each other's throats, while other people are playing games with politics and war and buying into the system, she's got a whole nother system she's building that is much more humane, but is in no way human, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, and I'm forgetting the character's name, the one that is it Richard that dies, and she's the only one that's crying over it. And
crap! I almost said Walker. No, the guy from Venus. I don't know. Forget. He's dead. I've forgotten him. The actor.
We don't even know our own show.
He's dead. Yeah, but no, she's the only one crying.
What's that?
Yeah, she's right. Crying because she doesn't know how to experience death without. I mean, in her world, a death is a transition to a higher plane, and they stay in touch with them.
Right. Yeah.
You're in for everybody just to watch this guy drop and walk away. It appalls her, and it seems like me she is the only decent reaction to it.
Right. And so she's sort of the emotional compass in a way. Like she gives the gravity. She anchors in the emotional response that in this very hostile universe, right? Because she's been on Ganymede with her sisters, and she hasn't been thrust into this sort of vortex that's leading us toward the end of humanity. And so if anything, she could just sort of be a reminder of oh yeah, maybe we should be taking a beat. We've just lost a life. Why, how can we just move past that so quickly?
Yeah, this shouldn't be a day at work.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, say that again?
This shouldn't be a day at work.
This shouldn't just be business as usual. Yeah.
A little universe just died. A little universe, a way of looking, a unique quantum miracle just ended.
A unique quantum miracle. What if we all regarded each other as that?
Then we'd all live in Ganymede with sex. And that's the point, isn't it? I actually, she's written to be ignored in the first, in the opening, because I'm trying to make the point that how we treat people like this, you idiots, and they've got the answers. We're so used to our fiction.
Sure. Yeah. Or just manhandling it, right? Controlling it, going in, making actions, doing things. And she's the one that will just sit there and go, hold on a second. I've got to breathe. I'm channeling. It's like, I don't got time for that. You know what I mean? It's just like that whole meditation. I remember when I first started doing meditation, the idea of giving myself 5 minutes in the morning was I don't have time for 5 minutes. Are you kidding me? 24 hours in a day? Now I give myself an hour in the morning. I've got this little ritual that I do, and it really just grounds me down. And I feel so much more fulfilled, and I feel so much more connected. And actually, interestingly enough, I get more done.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. This happened to me a few years ago, but when I started spending an hour and a half in the morning at the gym, it's an hour and a half where you're not in conflict with someone, and you can hear yourself think. And maybe thoughts of kindness, maybe thoughts of regret. Maybe you can get yourself hey, I didn't handle that well yesterday. I got to go make amends for this. But if you don't give yourself a few minutes to think, and then also I found a support system of people at the gym, and we all go there and we're together. And then, we go through lives and deaths together and their families. And it's amazing how we basically have the people in our family, and the people we work with, right? I mean, who else do Americans have in their life, you know?
Friends that can be chosen family, but yeah, you're right. It's that, you know, and I keep going back to that word tribe, because that's how it really started off, as these tribes. I mean, even think about like raising a child, where now it's just supposed to be one person's responsibility. I mean, it was a tribe
That's
of people.
impossible. Children
Yeah.
don't sleep.
They don't. Ask my brother and sister-in-law. They've got 5 of them up in Montana.
Yeah,
It's
I've got 3. I mean, you know, no, when you realize when you have kids, and, you know, I came out to California, so my wife and I both are out here by ourselves. We literally didn't have anyone to help us with. And you realize this is insane. And just 50 years ago,
yeah.
well, maybe more than 50 now, because I'm the age I am. Let's say just 100 years ago, the idea of raising a child outside of a community
Oh,
is insane. And
yeah.
the fact that those communities had been identity politicked into fighting like cats and dogs is a different question. But the idea of having a community, my Aunt Sis, we call her my Aunt Sis, you know, back in the Irish tenements, when you were too poor to feed your children, you would hand one of your children to your neighbors who you all loved and you were family, and they would raise your children right next to you. And my Aunt Sis was actually a child that my grandmother took in from the neighbors, and
Wow.
raised, you know, as a sister to my mother and brother, my mother and my aunts and uncles. And she was Aunt Sis. Her name was Joan, but
Right.
they called her, when I got to know her, she was Aunt Sis, and everybody called her Sis because that was her role, you know. And then, but she still knew her parents. Her parents were just down the hall. They just
Wow.
couldn't afford to feed her.
It's incredible.
And so that's what it used to be like. It was very common practice to raise each other's children. And
Yeah.
now we're 100 years from there, and it's like, let's put them in camps and let them die. You know, let's. But I mean, that's
That's
how
a bit of a fatalistic point of
well,
view, but yeah, you're right.
well,
Yeah.
we're going to send your working class mother, you know, the single mother, because we give her no support, and it's perfectly fine to have a guy take off and leave a child. Let's force her in a position where she has to go back to work.
Yeah. It's
She has to drop you at school and risk that child dying of a disease that is utterly preventable. I mean,
yeah.
and we talk like this makes sense.
No, it doesn't. It would be so great if we could go back to that sort of just communal energy. I mean, I guess what's tricky is when people start to feel like, can we enforce that upon someone, or can that be a choice by the individual? And that's where like this whole freedom conversation comes in.
Yeah, I mean, we can't enforce good behavior. That's never worked. But you can teach it through example and through spirituality. I mean, it would take a few generations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always I wouldn't say rose-colored glasses, but I always believe in giving space for change and for, as I dare say, as a Christian woman, evolution of a person, of humanity. And I think if we lose the potential of that and the belief and the faith in that, well, that to me is like nihilistic. I mean, that would just be, yeah.
Yeah, capitalism runs out of control and the earth gets used up. And, you know,
Right.
some of us are rich enough to die later than others, but we all end up in
Right.
the same pile.
Right. There's this thing called heart-centered entrepreneurship, or like spiritual capitalism. I mean, see that? Don't you see the masculine and feminine component there? Capitalism in and of itself is not a bad thing. Money in and of itself is not a bad thing. In fact, the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil, not money. Abundance is wonderful. Abundance is here. There's plenty to go around. It's the love of it.
No, give unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, you know, render unto God's what is his. You know, it's not a bad thing in itself, just it's not God.
No, it's
Well,
not.
except it now is. So we should just start.
Well, you can make it your God if that's your choice.
Well, it's interesting. The system seems to put a lot of work into making us want, you know, to act like that.
Oh, it's everywhere you go. It is everywhere you look. And I mean, and sorry to say this, but like social media, I get it, but I also kind of long for the days that we had where we didn't have it. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchatty, TikToky people. I get it. Like, in a way, we're connecting. And it's really cool that like the principal at like my Christian schools, like, hey, good job on your show where you play a witch. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Like, you're cool with that. But it also can lead to a lot of depression, a lot of comparison, a lot of bullying, a lot of intolerance for other people's opinion, right? Because wherever we go, there we are. And the thing about things like this is you can put up the best picture, right? You see how the lighting's right here, how the lighting is on
Yes.
me, and the
Yes.
hair and the thing.
I'm
I don't roll to bed like
stunned.
this.
I'm
What?
stunned. I'm stunned. Your eyes are flashing.
Yes, the blue. Yeah, but it's, and you can look at that and you can go, oh God, you know, that person, I was using that just as a silly example, but you know, the perfect snapshot of a family.
No, I get that. If you're
Yeah.
constantly being beaten over the, that, and then we don't behave like that all the time. It's something we do.
And you're scrolling and you're scrolling and you're seeing all these things and you're thinking about the things that are lacking in your life and you're comparing. And then it's just like, oh, well, everyone's got it. Everyone's got to figure it out except for me. It's just not true.
Isn't it amazing that we don't use social media to share the hardest parts of our lives? We just do it to try to say, I'm winning and you're not. I mean,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be wonderful you went through social media and it was one story of another of people saying, I've been through this hardship, keep it up, you'll be fine, we love you. Instead of grabbing us, pulling us together like that, it turns us into this schoolyard bully.
Yeah.
Thing. So you don't know anything about my history, and I'll edit this part out. So, but just what I'm talking about from that is that I grew up in the south side of Chicago, outside Marquette Park, which is the murder capital of the world. So where I grew up was one of the most violent places in the world. Forgive me, Bosnia, in the United States.
Some places in the Middle East, maybe.
Yeah, you know what? That was an American talking. Damn, I hate it when I do that. Okay, it was one of the
You're an American.
I try so hard not to be. I really do try to travel better than that. But so I grew up in an insane amount of violence. I mean, from the it's like trying to tell a fish there's such a thing as water is what I always tell people. That's how much violence there was, and I didn't even recognize it myself.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. What I was just saying is, but the thing you immediately did was you immediately found, I'll use your word tribes, but I don't think they're as healthy as tribes. And I guess technically they're gangs, but you immediately had to find groups.
Belonging.
And belonging was safety. And what happens is that once you do that, then everybody else is the other. And the schoolyard was dangerous. People died in my schoolyard all the time. So you were with your friends, your group, and eventually, we were parts of the many parts of gangs, which is why you shouldn't give people who are in gangs shit if you haven't lived that life. But you paired off and you all grabbed your own territory, and you can see how this starts to sound like how we live now. Everybody's grabbing their own territory because they're scared. There's enough of you got to be safe. Yeah. And anyone who wanders through that, unaware of how this works, is a victim.
Yeah.
And somehow it seems like social media, it always reminds me more of, that schoolyard and that gang territory I grew up in, where, we were all so scared of each other, we were trying to intimidate each other.
Yeah.
And we were also scared of being thrown out of our group. Mm-hmm. That you would follow any rules, no matter how insane.
Even if it doesn't resonate with your truth.
Yeah. And you're so scared of being kicked out. It's not even like you trust that these people love you enough for you to have a discussion about maybe whether or not we shouldn't do this. It's like the first person to open their mouth is thrown out and you shut up because you don't want to walk home alone. Doesn't that sound like social media? Doesn't that sound like what we've been forced into? It's the
and it goes on both sides. I mean, with everything that we've been enduring, with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and everything that's happening politically right now, and people that are really, their heart's really in the right place to like evoke change and to look at the system. Just like I said, it's like, okay, we've progressed. And we've sort of hit this moment where things are unearthing. Whenever things unearth like this, like there's a virus that's coming out, there's a sickness that's coming out, there's a systemic racism that's coming out, there's things called microaggressions that maybe you weren't even aware of that are coming out. It's an opportunity to look at it and ask ourselves, how can we do better? How can I do better individually? How can we do better as a collective? But what happens
is cancel culture blows it to pieces.
Oh, it's incredible. And the judging. What's that?
We have to welcome the change in the other. And in order to do that, we have to hear them.
Let's listen.
Yeah, and we don't have to agree with them. I mean, you're a sexist asshole. But once you're done talking, maybe we can get to you,
But just
I'm
that
sorry.
thing that you said, it's the listening thing that's so important. It's like, just because someone voted for Trump, which by the way, I didn't, and there are people that that did in my family, doesn't make them a racist person. It makes them vote for a certain party because of certain things that they hold
Yeah,
value
you
in.
can, it's easy to call the whole Midwest racist.
We just lump them and we
And,
just put them in a thing.
and but having said that, having grown up there, it's very tempting to call the whole.
Yeah, listen, I'm not saying reform doesn't need to be happen. I'm
Yeah,
not saying that at all.
exactly. But that isn't necessarily why a bunch of desperate people who are watching their children lead lives of desperation and don't have the resources to put them through school and don't have job security and don't know what they're going to be doing for a living when they're 50 and have had everything they've been told would give them security ripped away from them by both parties lying to them with a smile.
There you
Yeah,
go.
they threw a Molotov cocktail into fucking Washington. A
Yeah,
lot of that wasn't racism. It was fucking desperation. They were,
right.
I mean, maybe if we blow it up, things will be better. And obviously it didn't.
Right.
But that could happen again.
Yes. This is I just look at this time as what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a fertile but it's agitated. You know what I mean? Because it's like really electric and there's all these really negative feelings that we're like dealing with and there's like ugly things that we've got to look at. If we can just be okay being uncomfortable as we move through it and actually reach our hand out to each other rather than this. That thing, like, right, I'm pointing at you and there's three back at me, right? We know that one. But like, no one has ever been inspired to look at themselves and change. Yeah.
I didn't know that. That was good.
Right. When you point your finger out, there's three pointing back at you because it's all a projection.
For the people not watching this on video, she just made the classic finger gun at me. And she just said, one's pointing at the other, but three more pointing back at you. Until she said that, I had never realized that. And that's what just happened. I'm sorry. Please keep going.
But that's the thing. Like, I mean, and you got it from all fronts, people judging you for where you were at with your wokeness. Like, well, how woke were you? Well, I was this woke before that. And I've got a t-shirt to prove it, and it's like, here we are, we're in this like shaming each other and judging each other rather than going, this sucks. We're here with all these uncomfortable, ugly parts of ourselves as a collective. Let me check in with myself. Like, what's my responsibility? What have I not been hearing or seeing or doing? If we could really just get back into that personal responsibility place. And believe me, I've had quite an education and I'm continuing to get it. And I've got a lot of friends who are like turning me on to really great workshops and things where I can actually hear from people who actually are living that experience on ways in which we can come together. But if we could really do it in a way where no one's like, we're not judging and shaming and blaming each other, then people are actually inspired to want to know. They're like, oh, well, I'm curious. Can we be curious rather than judgmental?
It's possible. Danielle, you are an incredible, and this I realized when I started talking to you the first time, you're an amazingly insightful person. And you come at this with equal amounts, I think, of empathy and intellect. Because what you've just described is the only hope for, I think, for our democracy. Because democracy doesn't work if we tear at each other.
No.
It won't. And
No.
by the way, every democracy in history has failed.
Mm-hmm.
Americans tend to think that there's such a thing as, democracy is the natural state. Well, before us, the previous democracy was Athens. And that not only failed, almost everybody was killed in the failing of it.
Yeah. Rome was a republic, right?
Rome was a republic. It was a republic by the rich people. So like you weren't automatically guaranteed a vote. And then when they killed Caesar, it wasn't even that anymore. It just kept on the trappings of it. But democracy is not the natural state of humankind. And because it requires brother and sisterhood. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to at least acknowledge your humanity because we live together.
It's the basics that you said. It's like shelter, an opportunity to thrive, safety, food, the love, acceptance, belonging. Like it's very basic. You talked about, I also had a stint with homelessness too in my family. We, without getting into too many details, there was a moment where like the real estate thing in '83 happened. And there was a moment where a family from the church had taken us in, and it was, yeah, it was during my formative years. So there was a lot during that moment of just uncertainty and sort of that like clamoring and clawing and going like, where's the ground that I'm on? But, you know, we were provided for. I mean, it wasn't our home, but we had a home, and there was food. And then eventually, you know, my father got himself back out there and had a phenomenal career after that. But it's like, during that moment, you know, we think about these shows where they're showing to us like, oh, you got to have this car or the thing or this body and live in this zip code and do the thing and travel there and be on the thing. And it's like, none of that. We know none of that gives us fulfillment. It doesn't. It's the basic essential things that are being fulfilled in our life that give us that sense of wholeness.
Beautifully said. And I love the way you could come through something like homelessness personally. I mean, you were doing it with your family, which I think it helps. But you could come through that and not be grasping and terrified. You know, the caricature of the Karen type that we see on there. I mean, these are people who are terrified of losing things. You can see this. Nobody. Yeah, if you're not terrified, you don't act like that. You know, if you're a rich son of a bitch who isn't happy at $1 million or $2 million, you feel the need to screw people over for another 30. You're scared.
You're scared.
And usually you can trace that back to some sort of deprivation, you know, some sort of
trauma.
Yeah, but it apparently didn't affect you. You apparently came out of it more warm and more willing to look for spiritual instead of physical. I'm amazed. Most people I know who come through that kind of deprivation, poverty, you know, they come out mean, evil, grasping sons of bitches like me. I'm really surprised to see. I'm thrilled. I mean, like I said, you're quite the inspiration of the way you approach things.
Oh, I mean, I've had quite a curriculum of spiritual journey. It was not. I mean, no. There was a moment where I was a shopping addict, and the second I got my first TV series, I was just buying Louboutin shoes. I was just like, oh, I can do this now, and this is going to make me feel something about myself. No.
Are Louboutin shoes easier to get on and off because of the lubrication? What is a Louboutin shoe?
That's so disturbing. No, it's
I don't know what the hell Louboutin is. I assume that's a very expensive shoe you just said.
Christian Louboutin is the one who designed the shoe with the red bottom, with the sole, the bottom sole's red.
Oh, well, so basically, thank God he's a millionaire now, because, you know, that changed everything.
Oh, it did. It's very sexy. And so the idea was, I think that when he was growing up in France, like he and his poor mother lived in the red light district, and all of the, check this out. These are the shoes that women want to wear, right? This is an interesting trope, or what's the word I'm looking for? Archetype, this archetypal thing. The prostitutes would walk around in their heels, and the red light would shine up on the bottom of the heel. Of the sole of the shoe, so he would see the red light. And this, I believe, Christian Louboutin, I hope I'm not bastardizing your story, I believe that's how he came up with the concept of the Louboutin.
Well, I mean, he associated with the sex,
with being a hooker,
which is pretty fucked up, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I really couldn't get enough of those hooker shoes, and I just kept putting them on and putting them on. No, but look, it's a journey, and I'm not on a mountaintop, and I'm, you know, as much as I want to think that I'm, you know, the next Skywalker, I mean, I'll get there, and Wonder Woman and all the archetypes that I love. And it's, I think a lot of it's the acceptance piece, right? Because when we're in acceptance and we're just like grateful, I'm grateful just for the birds that sing outside, or I just heard a little kid laughing, like, oh, that's, I'm so grateful. I got to hear that. Like the ocean breeze coming in, because ultimately, if we're not in the moment grateful with what we have, we're always going to be grasping for that other 30 mil, because the 20 mil and the 50 mil is not going to be enough. It's the next thing. It'll never lead to fulfillment. Is
gratitude the key to being present in the moment? Is that, if you had to tell everybody how you do it, is that it?
Gratitude. Yeah. Practice gratitude. That is exactly how you can anchor in the moment, because simple gratitude every day is just for what is. Like, I'm grateful for the fact that I have this amazing water filter that like does reverse osmosis. Oh, do you see my lipstick stains on the glass?
Sure.
And every time I take a sip, I'm just like, I feel it like feeding my cells. And it's just like little things. It's a practice. It's a daily practice. It brings you in the moment, and you come from a place of abundance. just abundance. I've got this tree, this money tree that's like blooming. I give it water once a week and I look at it and I feel abundant, you know, like look at this nice furniture that I was able to get is abundant. I cut flowers and I put it my thing. I'm hearing like a bird. It's like, oh, like I feel so grateful. And it's just abundance.
Even when there is not an abundance, there's always something to be grateful for.
There's always something. Yeah, yeah. Even when I'm not working, you know, that's the time where it's tough, right?
Oh, I mean, yeah, in your world too. I mean, actors and actresses go through a constant set of judgment,
Oh,
unemployment, and being
oh,
rejected for no reason. I mean,
just rejection all day long.
how you're not all, yeah, how you're not all drunk and high all the time, I have no idea.
Why do you think I'm in therapy my entire life? Why do you
But
think I keep doing these therapy workshops?
it's a brutal lifestyle, guys. For you guys who don't, I won't get into this too much, but I'm on the other side of it, and I experience it too. You know, directors and showrunners selling things and trying to sell things and being rejected. But to be an actor is to show up, trying to look as good as you can. You know, walk into a room and have a whole bunch of people. The first thing they do when they lay eyes on you is look for imperfections, and you're aware of it. Then you sit down.
Judge on the second you walk in, you're judged. Yeah.
And then you have to sit down and try to work with somebody who, in many cases, is a bored asshole, to get a performance. You know, that is you're desperate to have the part usually because you're starving.
Yeah.
And then you walk out and no one ever tells you why you didn't get it. Nobody ever tells you good job. Nobody ever appreciates you. And you do this 30 times a week, you know, until you can get a job acting somewhere where then basically every day is still this by the entire crew to a lesser extent.
Right.
You know, it's a brutal way to live. So when Danielle talks about being grateful, you got to understand what she goes through on a daily basis. I'm not just telling the story to the story. We're all like, yeah, it's easy for you to be grateful. You can afford your fancy water filter and you get a money tree. My money tree died. No.
Did you? You probably overwatered it.
I did. I overwatered my money tree with my tears because I didn't have any money. And
because I was broke and I was crying on my money tree.
But when an actor and actress talks a little bit about, you know, being grateful or living in the moment, you got to understand the pressure on them to turn into monsters every day.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and that's why when you meet actors like Danielle, who she called me up when we were doing this, and she wanted to talk about the character, and we talked about the character she was going to play for hours. Now, this is a character for a podcast, which is beneath her. She volunteered her time, which was generous and awesome, and then she volunteered more time to learn the character. Then the day of, she showed up, and while the rest of everybody else was just trying to figure out how much they were going to bring to it, she went, you know, 7th gear right out of the bat. And everybody I've talked to has said, okay, the moment Danielle came out, we all said, fuck this. And we all sat up and braced ourselves. And the show just, like, you know, the acting on the show just shot up when she walks in. To be able to do that is really exceptional, because you have to understand it's not like the stuff the rest of us are going through every day. To hold on to that kind of passion and love at what you do, and then be able to divorce yourself from the work enough to approach it as an artist, which is, by the way, everybody, the key to being an artist, to stop the rest of it, is an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. And when you meet people like this, you ask them to if you can interview them.
Aww,
because
that is so kind.
No, she's just an exceptional, insightful, smart person who is going through tremendous amounts of pressure every day, and yet still, you know, I envy her peace, and I envy her calm and her wisdom. Would you have any last things you'd like to say before?
Yeah, I'd like to know who this Danielle you're talking about is. Can I meet her? Because she just sounds like someone that I want to know. I don't know if that's me.
I'll send you the videotape in about half an hour.
Oh, cool. Great. I'd love to learn a thing or two, because I'm just like this human being. Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, yeah, it's, you know, here's the thing. There's so much out of our control. Daily, moment by moment. We're in control. I'm in control of me, how I'm receiving, how I'm being, how I'm projecting, choices I'm making. That's like, I love that be, do, have. Like, it starts with your beingness first. I don't have control who's going to be in office in November. We don't have control. I know I'm in control of one thing, how I vote. You know, how I show up. You know, we have choice every day. And it also is a choice to not let ourselves, I'll say myself, get swept up into the trauma, drama cycles that we can go through as a society, where we start to then pit up against each other. We start to close off our hearing. We know we put you on the bad side, I'm on the good side, and we stay divided. So if there's anything that I would encourage, it would be first, take really, really good care of yourself, love and accept who you are. If there's something you don't like, you have the power to change it, and then give that same kind of grace to the people around you. And really, really, the more we love and care about ourselves, the easier it is to love and care about each other. Maybe we will create that utopian society that you and I are dreaming of. And we won't go down the spiral of Sentinels where we're creating half alien, half human monsters that turn against us. I mean, it's an amazing, the Xenoms, right? Xenos, yeah. Which is an incredible statement on how we can, we're trying to advance so much as humans, right? Get more and more, advance. And then we end up creating these things that turn against us.
So it's Star Trek or Sentinels, guys. You got a choice out there. Either be more like Danielle and make Star Trek, or you're going to end up with
You know what? Battlestar's right down the middle, because they had, the Cylons. And,
choose a future, for Christ's sake. Don't put it.
I have. It's
ideal or it's ideal or it's crap. That's all we get. Sorry, I turned Irish talking pessimistic.
I like it. Well, I'm right down the middle, which will piss a lot of people off. I already told you. So.
Oh, there we go.
You can't pull me from the middle ground, babe.
Good for you.
But guess what? I'll invite you on my ship and we'll talk about it.
That'd be lovely. All right. If there's a ship out there I want to be on, it's hers. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Danielle for a wonderful, insightful, and again, brave interview. This is the kind of person she is. This is the kind of people who worked with us on Sentinels. Every one of them got on the, talked for real. I mean, you'd be amazed what a rare blessing that is in Hollywood to meet people who are willing to talk about truth. So thank you very, very much.
Happy to bare my soul and be vulnerable and truthful with you any day of the week. And so grateful that you trusted me to bring Six alive and to really just channel her. And I can't wait I hope that there's more. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I hope so too. But like you said, it's not in our control. I'm going to try to be grateful about something instead of freaking out about that tonight. That would be one night in a row I've done that.
Text me. I'll send you like a beautiful sort of Zen type music meditation. And just, people are loving it. People are loving the Sentinels universe.
I'm glad. I hope so. At least it's out there now. And so we'll see what the universe brings next. I so hope this recorded. Thank you so much.
Me too.
Thank you so much for everything you do and everything you are. Thank you very much. Everybody, please follow Danielle on social media if you want to give your quick info.
Yeah, it's just at Danielle Bisutti everywhere. So there you go.
That's Danielle Bisutti. Follow her. You will enjoy it. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Good stuff.